What do you think of this, though? As an outsider, you're listening to some of the conversations here in the U.S. As someone who's not a U.S. citizen, do you have any thought on that, by the way?
Well, I do think...
Can you explain what's going on with Venezuela and Colombia really fast?
It's a very similar opinion to what with Americans that are not in favor of people immigrating to a country. It's a very similar scenario because a lot of them are not immigrating to the country legally. My brother was robbed at gunpoint by a Venezuelan immigrant, and I still have no resentment towards Venezuelans. There's good people everywhere, there's bad people everywhere, and there's people who are just acting to make their lives better.
There's, 500,000 Venezuelans living in Bogota alone, right? A city of 8 million people, you got 500,000 Venezuelans. So it's like, damn, all right. So in your mind, you say, all right, there's 500,000, and this person is one person. So this is this idea that Canada is an unfriendly country or an enemy. 2016, at the start of the first Trump administration, just even going back, if we kept going back, it's basically, less than 5% of the American public. It fluctuates between 3, 4, and 5%, really. So the red are the Republicans, blues are Democrats, and then look what happens. It kind of goes up, and then down a little bit, and then they kind of almost meet again, and then suddenly, under Biden, it starts to take off, and it's like, whoa, like what happened here with these people that they got the message that Canada is our enemy, whereas these people here, they don't seem to have changed very much. They went up a little bit, so, but that's pretty significant. What do you think of this, though? As an outsider, you're listening to some of the conversations here in the U.S. As someone who's not a U.S. citizen, do you have any thought on that, by the way?
Well, I do think, it's very significant how it spiked recently, the perspective that Canada is a non-friendly country to the U.S., given the trade history both countries have. Yeah. And how close trade partners they've both been. Do you
hear it, though, as someone who's living here? Do you hear this conversation about Canada?
Not amongst people, but definitely amongst the media. Okay. I know President Trump has had his fair words to say about Canada recently.
Yeah, so those come through to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
They do.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that it was already going up among Republicans. And then, so Trump really started talking trash about Canada or whatever, right? Somewhere right in here. So, it was already on its way up. It's just so interesting how the idea of an enemy can shift, right? So here's my thought. Do you think these people here, any of them, think that they've been persuaded by something outside of their own thoughts? Do you think that they would say, no, I've just come to think about this issue differently?
Do you mean a new voice has had some sort of influence on this?
Yeah. Or is it all these individuals in the U.S. who are just collectively deciding Canada is our enemy? Yeah.
I definitely do think some of the stuff that has been said recently has to influence with it, especially if you see just how the Republican and Democrat curves change, right? Because, we have a Republican president right now, and if he's talking about how we're going to put tariffs on everyone, and, Canada was in that equation not too long ago. I know the tariffs were paused for 90 days. And, I feel like a lot of the Republican crowd, what they will hear in the news is what Trump says, right? Or the Trump administration says, and they will hear that. And at the end of the day, that's the president they voted for, and they have their faith on the president, and that will sway their opinions on stuff.
Yeah, so they're more likely to believe something that he says, as opposed to if it was Biden. And the other side, if Biden was the one saying Canada's an enemy, then maybe the Republican voters would be like, I don't know if I believe that guy.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, there's a very big crowd, not just here in America, but everywhere in the world, that I feel like people forget to their own research sometimes and just hear the big voices and what they have to say. And for example, if this was the case of Biden saying that Canada was an enemy, then I mean, you could expect to see a similar trend to this one.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the lessons I'm always trying to show is that we're all following most of the time, right? We're not making individual decisions distinctly on our own. We're following, and that's why we see these trends. It's like groups of people. Hey, can you go to the next slide? So this is Russia is an unfriendly country or an enemy. So the Democrat, they kind of come together here, right? Kind of as we begin to lead up to the Ukraine war, and we stick together, and then suddenly it really shifts the same thing, and it starts to go down, thinking like, oh, it's not unfriendly, right? So fewer Republican voters are saying that Russia's unfriendly, because, once again, their leader is telling them, hey, man, these folks aren't unfriendly. Whereas down here, Ukraine is unfriendly. Here it goes up again, because of the leadership. Because, we follow what our leaders say. So, it's really fascinating to me. Does that surprise you at all?
Yeah, I think that trend is really interesting, how just the perspective of who's an enemy and who's not.
Dude, it's almost like overnight. You suddenly have this person who's, like, hey, we're on this side and not on this side. And then suddenly it just switches. It's like, wait, hang on a second. Wait, I thought we were supporting this group and not that group and that group and not this group. And it's like, and then what it makes me wonder about is this decision about enemies, how random it is, right? So let me ask you, do you have enemies?
No, not at all.
You don't have personal enemies?
No. No enemies.
Do you, as a citizen of Colombia, have enemies?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah? You don't see it like that?
No.
Can you explain what's going on with Venezuela and Colombia really fast?
Well, this has been going on forever, right? For a very long time. And, it essentially just Venezuela's going through some very hard political times. Their president, Nicolás Maduro, has been in power, I think it's over 12 years now he's been in power, since 2013, I think. And yeah, I mean, Venezuela has gone through some horrible economic times. Thanks to him, they suffered one of the worst hyperinflations I think they suffered the worst hyperinflation in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And
not the history of the world, but a really big one. Yeah.
Okay. And this led to a lot of Venezuelan immigration outside of the country. And as you can see on that map, Colombia shares a really big border with Venezuela, and so that's where most of the Venezuelan immigrants started shifting towards.
And they at least go through Colombia on their way to Ecuador or Chile or Brazil or wherever they're going, or to the United States.
Yeah. Or even to travel to other countries, because I know Venezuela has a lot of travel restrictions with other countries. So
62% of the Colombian population said they had a really unfavorable opinion of Venezuelans. So why? What was that about? What would you say that's about?
Well, I have a pretty good idea what that's about. It's I don't know the exact statistics, but there's a lot of Venezuelan immigration to Colombia, and in big cities like Bogota, you see a very prevalent Venezuelan population, and a lot of these people that move out of the country are pretty poor. So you've started to see a lot more poverty in the city, a lot more crime, but I mean, these are all factors that are influenced by socioeconomic status.
So Venezuelans, the economy crashes. Venezuelans are trying to survive. It's really hard to survive in Venezuela unless you're from the upper class, right? People coming through Colombia, people who even were middle class in Venezuela suddenly, you know, a school teacher that's suddenly in Venezuela is making $60 a month. And, you know, a dozen eggs cost $5. So you're really barely surviving. So all these people are leaving, coming through Colombia. And then the Colombians have an unfavorable opinion because just seeing so many people.
Yeah. And crime has gone up a lot, as I said before.
It's gone up some, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, it's a very similar opinion to what with Americans that are not in favor of people immigrating to a country. It's a very similar scenario because a lot of them are not immigrating to the country legally, and they're coming in, and Colombia has resources to help out these. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess you can call them. Yeah, no, these people who are migrating.
Like economic refugees, really.
Yeah, economic refugees. That's what I wanted to say.
So here's my question for you. You said you don't have any enemies. At what point in time would what would have to happen with Venezuela to make Venezuela an enemy?
I feel like a country it has two things. It has its people, it has its government, and you can't really consider a country an enemy just because of what its government is doing, right? These are all just people trying to make the best of their lives.
In the border there, really, in a certain sense, is kind of artificial, right? Because the Venezuelans and Colombians, you're the same people, really.
Yeah, I mean, the main passing point from Venezuela to Colombia is up there in Cucuta. Mm-hmm. That's where most of them come through, since most of them are coming from the north, which is like Venezuela's more densely populated region, I believe, and more towards the south. Yeah. It's, I believe, more jungle, similar to what you would see like in the Amazon in Brazil.
So go back again. What would happen? What would have to happen to you? What situation would have to occur for you, Lorenzo, to say, wait, hang on a second. These people actually are my enemy. Like what could happen that would lead you to go there, to think that?
I don't think anything. I mean, I'll share a personal story right now. My brother was robbed at gunpoint by a Venezuelan immigrant, mm-hmm. and I still have no resentment towards Venezuelans. I just feel like it's what we've been talking about in class a lot recently. There's good people everywhere, there's bad people everywhere, and there's people who are just acting to make their lives better mm-hmm. in some sort of way.
So your brother was robbed at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And you in your mind say, hey, that's somebody who robbed my brother, but there's 500,000 Venezuelans living in Bogota alone, right? A city of 8 million people, you got 500,000 Venezuelans. So it's like, damn, all right. So in your mind, you say, all right, there's 500,000, and this person is one person.
I mean, you got to see them for, you got to see them as, this is, like a delinquent. Like mm-hmm. like you can't generalize, just because this Venezuelan robbed my brother, you can't do that, right?
But
there's a lot of Colombian delinquents too,
Yeah. Have you been? People in your family have been robbed by Colombians, I'm sure, at some point. Somebody's been robbed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that leads other Colombians to make that step to say, oh wait, we got to get rid of these people because they've now become our enemies, right? They're taking too much from us. They're this. They're doing that.
Well, I think maybe a lot of it is the younger generation that maybe. I know Colombia last century went through some very hard times, and I know mm-hmm. Venezuela was a very friendly country that mm-hmm. received a lot of Colombians that immigrated to Venezuela when Venezuela was prospering financially to look for better economic opportunities. Uh-huh. So the way I see it, the way my family sees it, is that this is just something that Colombia is doing back for Venezuela, right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
They're countries that have shared a friendship over, like, not recently, but over in the past for extended periods of history.
And I made a comment earlier, like the border, in a certain sense, all these borders are artificial.
Yeah.
So before the Spanish came, there was no border there between Colombia and Venezuela.
No.
So
I mean, Colombia and Venezuela were the same country at a given point in time.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that shifts. Can you go to the next slide? I met this man and his daughter, and the daughter, she was like really, really, they're Venezuelans. And I was on Calle 15.
Yeah. I've been there.
So the daughter was really, really precocious, and I was like, hey, wait. They were asking for money, and they wanted to buy milk. They had an infant child. They walked all the way from Venezuela, man. They had an infant child at home with the mother and or his wife, and they wanted milk. And I'm like, wait, hang on a second, man. Like, what? So I said, hey, why don't you come and talk in my class and tell your story on the next day? This was like a Tuesday. I said, come back. I'll meet you here on a Thursday. We'll talk in my class. So we live streamed them in the class. And the little girl was like, she's really intense, really funny, really precocious. And I'm like, and you just fall in love with her. And she's really cool. And anyway, we raised money for them. The class donated like $1,000, and someone watching the live stream doubled it to $2,000. And I gave it to them. And Julie gave it to them when I wired it down to Julie. And, it bought they didn't have their passports. They didn't have Venezuelan passports. They didn't have work permits in Bogota. They had nothing. And so the money that we gave them paid for all of the permits that they could have to work. And so the kids could go to school in Colombia. So anyway, so we did that. And I was thinking, you got to, when you meet them, like for you, like you've met a lot of Venezuelans, right? When you meet people up front, like face to face, it just changes everything, right? Like them, the moment you start talking, you can have any vision you have, even about here in the United States, about undocumented immigrants. But like, how many people know undocumented immigrants? How many people have sat down and talked to someone and become friends with them? And like, it's a lot harder to have these kind of opinions about who is our enemies, all that kind of stuff. So, it's a wild story, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I do feel like those types of stories, people who've literally had to sacrifice everything, and I mean, like this guy walked, I don't know how many thousands of kilometers, because that's
it's a long way, man. They were coming from Caracas.
Yeah, walking from Caracas to Bogota, that's a very long journey, and I feel like if people listen to stuff like this, I feel like they'd feel a little more empathy for the immigration situation here in the U.S.
Well, at least it complicates it, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, like when I'm in Bogota and there's so many Venezuelans, man, and they're always asking for money and they're asking for something. And I'm walking down the street and it's like one family after another, and I'm just like, God, after a while, I'm just do this. I give my money out, and then I just go here. I can't take it anymore. And so there's that, like, annoyance you get, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, but I feel like, everywhere in South America, like even before the whole Venezuela incident happened, I feel like that's just been what's happening in Colombia.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? When people need money, and
I feel you see over there, you've seen homeless people your whole life. There's always someone at the stoplights putting on a show to try and get some money. This is not like something that was brought up onto us by Venezuelan immigration. This is a problem that's been existing.
Mm-hmm. And so you would say, hey, just meet people, connect with people, hear their stories, and I don't know, maybe the people we think are enemies are not necessarily our enemies.
I agree.
And the people who we're told are our enemies may or may not be our enemies.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't know how anyone, enemies at all, man. It's just such a strange thing. And for me to see anybody saying that Canadians are our enemies, I'm just like, Canadians? Like what, man? Come on. Whether they're Republicans or Democrats or whatever, it doesn't really matter.